This necklace was bought for me by one of my YouTube fans. Actually, she's a bit more than a fan, but I won't go into that right now. Greetings, fellow snowflakes. I'm always grappling with the many arguments and discussions around gender identity. I share RadFem concerns about gender stereotypes and the erasing of language talking about issues pertaining to biological sex. Then I get sucked into their rhetoric and it ends up hurting me. I hear the many voices exasperated at the plethora of gender labels and pronouns, or the groupthink and accusations of bigotry should anyone dare to question the validity of the very concept of gender identity. I watch with interest the videos by, say, Kazum Fowler about these issues, a well-meaning gay man who is both accepting of gender-variant people and critical of the current manifestations of dialogue around gender. And I get confused. A lot. But amongst my confusion and questions, I came up with the idea for this video. Initially, I simply wanted to share some questions I asked myself, my answer to those questions, and to post a poll about what people think I am. And I'm still going to do that at the end of this video. But first I wanted to say this. Maybe gender identity is a fiction. Now, before all my SJW allies start jumping down my throats, just hear me out. There is the fact that some people have a condition where their brain is in conflict with their anatomy. This is a medically recognised condition with some hard evidence to support it. I may well do a video in the future that looks at the scientific evidence for this condition, but I believe that this condition exists. Then there is the very real fact that we treat people differently based on their perceived gender, and that the way people prefer to be treated does not necessarily align with their biological sex. This is the stereotypes and roles that RadFems talk about, but unfortunately they don't take their compassion or understanding of this matter far enough. Those are the two matters that this boils down to, but an internal sense of gender, an immutable innate knowledge of what gender you are, I think this may be a phantom that we have conjured up to explain and justify those two very real things I mentioned. What you think you are is very much tied up with what you think those words mean. What you feel you are is very much connected with the psychological associations you have to those concepts, and how you feel about the social roles in play. Let's not get confused here. You have no way of knowing how other people do or don't feel about their gender. You have no way of assessing whether your thoughts and feelings on this matter are real or simply the product of the way in which you think about gender. Your gender identity may simply be your philosophy about gender mixed with your own personal preferences. But some people have a conflict between their brain and their anatomy. This is a fact. It can manifest in three different ways. Feeling that your secondary sex characteristics are wrong, feeling that your primary sex characteristics are wrong, and difficulty with sexual function because what your anatomy is equipped to do doesn't fit with the kind of sex your brain is expecting to happen. These are obviously all connected with a general sense in which your brain seems to feel that your anatomy should be that of the opposite sex, or perhaps for some people some kind of mixture. Sometimes all three factors are in play, sometimes only one or two of the factors. In my case it is the sexual function plus the secondary sex characteristics. My genitals don't feel wrong per se, but my sexual wiring doesn't seem to fit with having male anatomy, and my secondary sex characteristics seem wrong. Kind of weird and confusing, but there it is. The people who have this brain-body mismatch are the people that seek and need some kind of medical transition, whether partially or completely, depending on their actual issues. Then there are roles in society. We treat people differently according to what we perceive their gender to be. And for many people this is okay, but for some people it conflicts deeply with their true nature. Now, many of these things are stereotypes, and we as a society are, rightfully, moving past them. But let's not get complacent and start believing that there's no difference at all in how we treat women and men. The roles exist, and some people don't fit them. And let's not get into the whole nature versus nurture debate. It's interesting to ponder on whether these roles are based in any kind of biological tendencies. Maybe it's true that on average people who have a lot of testosterone in their body prefer a certain kind of social treatment to those who have a lot of estrogen in their body, or whatever other biological factor you wish to point to. Usually the correct answer to any kind of nature versus nurture discussion is that it's actually a bit of both. And it may well be. But nature or nurture doesn't really matter. The point is that there are people who differ in regards to the kind of roles and interactions they require to feel whole, happy and comfortable. In some cases they can simply be non-stereotypical examples of their biological sex. If that's enough, then great. But bear in mind that not all examples of how we treat men and women differently are stereotypes. There are ways we interact with each other where we always treat men a certain way and women a certain other way. So for some people, the only way they could exist in this world comfortably would be to be gendered as the opposite sex or not gendered at all. Now, there are three possible responses to this reality. And like it or not, it is a reality. We can either say that those exceptions to the rule don't matter, fuck them, let them be miserable, but I would argue that that's not the way a civilized society should behave. A second option is to simply stop treating people differently based on their biological sex. There is no necessary connection to biological sex and the kinds of roles and interactions people prefer. So treat everyone in a gender-neutral way until they specify some other way they would prefer to be treated. Remain open to the possibility that anyone you meet, no matter how they appear or what their sex is, could be any possible way at all, and stop treating people differently based on assumptions about gender. This would be the radical feminist option. Tear down gender. Or they claim this is their view, but scratch the surface and you'll find that they really do have very different ideas about how men and women are and how they should be treated. But whatever. The third option is to let gender continue as long as it's not sexist and stereotyped, because many people like being treated as ladies or gentlemen, and often you can tell this based on how they appear and or what their physical anatomy is, but also be open to the fact that some people may wish to be treated as the opposite sex, or to opt out of gender altogether. And don't make a big fuss about this, but just allow them to navigate and negotiate the world in the way that they need to. After all, everyone deserves the same courtesy and respect as everyone else, don't they? The point of social niceties is to make people feel honoured and respected, isn't it? Because, like it or not, gender-variant people exist, and the subtle little ways that we interact with each other, the myriad ways in which we gender people in day-to-day life, this was never about biology. It is a convention we have placed around a trend towards people of a certain anatomy preferring to carry themselves and be treated in a certain way. But exceptions exist, and everyone has the right to be themselves in society, don't they? Gender-variant people exist, and they also matter. So don't be an arse, okay? I've only really touched on social niceties, roles and interactions here. I've not mentioned tricky issues such as women's spaces here, toilets, changing rooms, prisons and the like. Personally, I think the risks that physically male individuals may or may not pose to physically female individuals are largely mitigated by hormones anyway. Taking feminine hormones and blocking masculine hormones really does alter sexual drive and temperament in a massive way. Plus, insisting on that factor, hormone replacement therapy for at least 3 months, as a means of determining these matters does eliminate the possibility of pervy cis men pretending to be trans to get access to female bodies. What sexually motivated creepy male is going to do that to his body, really? Anyway, on to the poll. Here are a set of questions I asked myself and the answers I gave. Preferred clothing/appearance. Feminine, slightly androgynous. Preferred pronouns/terms. I enjoy female ones, but don't make a big fuss about it. Name change? Yes, my name is Kim. I want to change it officially. Laser hair treatment on face? Yes, please. Sexual needs. Passive, submissive. Preferred gender of sexual partners. Women or feminine and or androgynous presenting people of any gender. I have no preference for sexual anatomy one way or the other. Hormones? Not sure. Genital surgery? Probably not. Does your biological sex fit your true nature? It seems a bit off, especially with regards to secondary sex characteristics. Do you have an internal sense of your own gender? No. I feel somewhat genderless, but with strong feminine tendencies. So the question is, what am I? Am I simply a submissive feminine man? Am I a cross-dresser? Am I a trans woman, or am I non-binary? I will post the poll and you can answer it for me if you wish. So, until next time, we're all different, we're all special, snowflakes unite.